Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I will explain about the introduction of Marginalist School. The Marginalist School began at 1871 between the period of classical and the neoclassical school. At that time, William Stanley Jevons and Khe began to use marginal analysis in the economics. The Marginalist School support the laissez-faire system and deductive approach. There were 6 figures that we need to know during the Marginalist School period. The forerunner of Marginalist School were Antoine Cournot and Jules Dupont. They pioneered the use of marginal analysis in economics. Next were the main figures during the Marginalist School, which were William Stanley Jevons and Khe. They published the influential books on marginal utility theory. Lastly, the second generation, which were Francis Isidro Edgeworth and John Baptist Clark, they expanded further the theory of marginal utility. The Marginalist School eventually becomes part of contemporary microeconomics.
Now, objectives from the Marginalist School are decision-making at the margin, value based on the utility and how market dynamics work. Decision-making at the margin. Marginalists focus on how people make decisions at the margin, meaning the choice to add or subtract one more unit of something. Second, value and utility. The Marginalist School also revolutionized how we think about value. Marginalists argue that value is subjective and depends on utility, the satisfaction or benefit derived from a good or service. Last, market dynamics. Marginalists examine how market dynamics operate based on individual choice. They focus on competitive market where price and output are determined by the interaction of consumer and producer.
Now, I will talk about the historical background of Marginalist School. During that time, the economics and social problem was still in a very bad condition, and it remained unsolved even after 100 years after the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. Example that we can look are poverty was widespread across the country, business fluctuation affected many people adversely, and even distribution of wealth and income was extremely uneven. And lastly, farmers and farm laborers had many difficulties and were forced to migrate to cities to find another solution. These problems caused people to find solutions beyond the classical economic thinking. This I will explain on the next slide. Next are the approach to overcome the social problems. The trend of the 19th century in Europe was to develop 3 approaches, which will promote social, so it can reduce the inequality by redistributing wealth and ensuring access to basic needs, such as healthcare, education, and housing for the people at the time. Next, bolsters trade union because it can empower workers and reduce the exploitation in the workplace. And lastly, demand government action to ameliorate conditions by regulating the economy. But the marginalists at that time opposed this approach. There are 4 things the marginalists defended. First, they defended the market allocation and distribution. They believe that voluntary exchange in a competitive market maximize overall welfare as each other trades until marginal benefits equal marginal costs. They also emphasize the role of individual choice and rational behavior in achieving optimal outcomes. Second, they also deployed the government intervention. They believe the government lacked the information to effectively allocate resources compared to decentralized market mechanism. Intervention by the government might distort price and lead to inefficiency. Third, the marginalists denounce socialism. And lastly, they discourage labor unionism as ineffective. Marginalists believe unions often pursue immediate benefits for members, for example, higher wages at the expense of long-term economic health, such as reduced competitiveness or productivity.
I will explain the 10 major tenets of the Marginalist School. This principle revolutionizes economics by focusing on individual decision-making and marginal analysis. Let's explore each tenet and its significance. Tenet 1. Focus on the margin. The first tenet is the focus on the margin. Marginalists directly attention to points of change where decisions are made, known as the margin. This idea extends Ricardo's marginal principle from rent theory to all areas of economics, emphasizing the importance of incremental decision. Tenet 2. Rational economic behavior. Next is rational economic behavior. Marginalists assume people act purposely, balancing pleasure and pain, measuring the marginal utility of goods and considering both present and future needs. Influenced by Jeremy Bentham's utilitarian ideas, they believe individuals seek utility and avoid disutility. Tenet 3. Macroeconomic emphasis. The Marginalist School emphasizes macroeconomics, focusing on individual decision-making, specific terms, and single markets. Unlike classical economists who analyze the aggregate economy, marginalists hone in on how individual influence and philosophical impact. Fourth tenet, abstract deductive method. Marginalists favor an abstract deductive approach injecting the historical method inspired by Ricardo and the classical school to use theoretical models to derive general economic principles, prioritizing analysis of the historical specificity. Tenet 5. Pure competition emphasized. They base their analysis on pure competition, market with many buyers and sellers, homogeneous product, uniform price, and no single entity powerful enough to influence the market. This ensures that supply and demand detected market outcomes without ultimate interference. Tenet 6. Demand-oriented price theory. The sixth tenet is the demand-oriented price theory. While classical economics emphasize production cost, marginalists focus on demand as the primary determinant of price. Early marginalists prioritize utility and consumer preferences on price convention. Tenet 7 emphasize on subjective utility. They also highlighted subjective utility, arguing that demand depends on individual perception of utility. Marginalists view cost as psychological sacrifice and Tenet 8. Equilibrium approach. Marginalists believe economic cost control conflict even when disrupting the system is toxic this equilibrium concept is the central demand. Tenet 9. Merger of land with capital goods. Marginalist group land with other property resources and treated returns like rent, interest, and profit as payment for using these resources. This perspective helps counter argument that land rent is unearned income. Tenet 10. Minimal government involvement. Lastly, marginalists support minimal government involvement. Like the classical school, they believe economic laws operate best without interference, ensuring maximum social benefit through the natural functioning of markets.
Next, I will continue with major question number 3. Major question number 3 is, whom did the Marginalist School benefit or seek to benefit? In general, this school benefit the merchant capitalists, the king, and the government official. In specific, this school benefit those whom were most powerful and had the most favorable monopolies and privilege. The state marginalist policy primarily aimed to strengthen national power by accumulating wealth, especially in the form of gold and silver. Domestic industry. The policy favor local production by protecting them from foreign competition through tariff and subsidies. government and ruling elites. By controlling trade and colonial resources, the ruling elite could increase their economic influence and maintain political power. Marginalists encouraged European nations to expand their empire, benefiting from resources and labor in colonies to enhance national wealth and self-sufficiency.
I will discuss about how was the marginalist school valid, useful, or correct in its time. The marginalist school introduced powerful tools for economics analysis such as geometric diagrams and mathematical techniques, which made economic analysis is more precise. It also emphasized demand in determining prices, shifting focus from production cost to how individual choice drive value. This focus on marginal analysis laid the foundation for modern economics and remains essential for understanding markets today. Next, the fundamental assumption of the marginalist school is that individuals make decisions based on marginal utility, meaning they evaluate the additional satisfaction gained from consuming one more unit of a good or service. This assumption shifted the focus of economic analysis from broad generalizations to the behavior of individuals making incremental choices. The marginalist school also introduced partial equilibrium analysis, which simplified the complexities of the real world by changing one variable at a time while holding other constant. This method allowed economists to study the effects of specific changes more clearly and provide a useful tool for understanding the dynamics of individual markets. The microeconomic approach focuses on how individual firms make decisions to maximize efficiency. For example, when a farmer hires an additional worker, production increases, but each extra worker contributes less due to diminishing marginal returns. The farmer should keep hiring until the marginal cost of hiring another worker, in bracket the wage, equals the marginal revenue from the added crop output. This complements the microeconomic approach by showing how the marginalist school applies the principle of marginal utility to decisions, helping firms allocate resources efficiently and maximize profits.
The next five major question is, which tenet of the marginalist school become lasting contributions? Firstly, Cournot points to the alleged fallacy of composition associated with marginalist and neoclassical employment theory. The point is, if one firm were to cut wages, it could expand its market by selling more goods at lower price. The decline in purchasing power among its own employees would not be affected, but if all employers were to cut wages, they might find their market shrinking rather than expanding. Secondly, critics argue that the assumption of pure competition was a reasonable extraction looking backward from 1870s, but it was too restrictive to be useful as competition declined after the 1870s. Pure competition can be found in only a few sectors of economy. Thirdly, the marginalists feel that the best government is the one that interferes the least become outdated as new events transpire and new economic theory develop. Fourthly, business cycle will generally ignore in a firm conviction which they think supply creates its own demand and therefore that full employment is the rule. The school failed to explain economic growth and its theory proved to be inadequate for slowly developing countries. The lasting contribution that developed by these economists and their forerunners in this school are mathematical economics, the basic monopoly model, a theory of duopoly, the theory of diminishing marginal utility, the theory of rational consumer choice, the law of demand, the law of diminishing marginal return as it applied to manufacturing enterprise, the concept of return to scale, work leisure choice analysis, and the marginal productivity theory of factor return.
I will continue with William Stanley Jevons' contribution. William Stanley Jevons is from 1835 to 1882. He was born on August 1, 1835 in Liverpool, England. Became a professor of logical, political economy and philosophy, first in Manchester. He also imbibed a logic machine theory. One of these outstanding contributions is developing of index power. One of the William Stanley Jevons contribution to economics is theory of diminishing marginal utility. Jevons challenged the classical focus on labor as the sources of value, suggesting instead of value depend entirely on utility. As you can see from the graph, the total utility that consumer receive from each quantity of commodity X is shown by TU in the upper graph. The lower graph shown marginal utility or the change in total utility as each unit of the utility is added. Marginal utility, which is equivalent to Jevons' final degree of utility, decline as more of commodities X is consumed. The total utility of quantity X1 is TUI. The marginal of utility unit is X1 as MU1. The second, as you can see from the graph, the total utility that consumer receive from each quantity of commodity X is shown by TU in the upper graph. The lower graph shown marginal utility or the change in total utility as each unit of the utility is added. Marginal utility, which is equivalent to Jevons' final degree of utility, decline as more of commodities X is consumed. The total utility of quantity X1 is TUI. The marginal of utility unit is X1 as MU1. The second contribution of William Jevons is theory of action. According to Jevons, action continued until the marginal utility of goods received equal that of the goods given up. The equi-marginal rule. Individuals allocate resources in a way that the marginal utility of one good matches the marginal utility of another, making trade mutually beneficial. The last contribution of Jevons is Jevons on labor. He viewed labor as a painful extraction that people are willing to endure to achieve income and satisfaction from good purchased with the income. He introduced the idea that work balances the pain of labor against the pleasure deriving from earning. From the graph, the optimal amount of work is shown by M, where the marginal utility of earning, QM, equal to the marginal of work, DM. Where QM equal to DM, the pleasure gained from the earning associated with the last unit of the work is equal to the pain of labor endured. The worker will choose to work and earn an amount of represented by point M because, as seen by the two curves, hours of work beyond M will result in the greater disutility from work that can in the utility from the extra earning. That's all from me. Thank you very much.
Now, I want to discuss about Antoine Augustin Cournot in developing the idea of the Marginalist School. He was a French mathematician who published treatises on mathematics, philosophy, and economics. He also was the first economist to apply mathematics to economic analysis, but his pioneering work was neglected until his death. He was the first economist to develop concise mathematical model of pure monopoly, duopoly, and pure competition. In analyzing the demand for copper and zinc, both used to produce bronze, Cournot also developed the earliest complete model of what we now refer to as the derived demand for resources. The first contribution of Antoine is Cournot's theory of monopoly. Cournot is credited with being the first economist to derive that a firm can maximize its profit by setting a price at which marginal revenue equal to the marginal cost. In 1838, he used a mineral spring case to explain this theory. The figures show the Cournot's theory graphically. Each additional unit sold will add its own price to the total revenue, but If that extra unit has not been offered for sales, the price received on the other liter would have been higher. At graph A, when the proprietor of spring charged 100 francs per liter, he would sell only 65 liters. The total revenue would be 6,500 francs at graph B. Because costs are zero, total profit also would be 6,500 francs. But notice from the graph A that marginal revenue is 80 at the 100 francs price. Clearly, the marginal revenue 80 exceeds the marginal cost zero. The monopolist will use try and error until the price settled at 60 francs. At 60 francs, buyer will purchase 200 liters and the total revenue will rise to 12,000 francs. This is the monopolist's maximum total revenue because marginal cost also zero. Now marginal revenue are equal to marginal cost. The profit maximizing condition is fulfilled. The second contribution of Antoine is Cournot's theory of duopoly. This is a market in which two firms compete. He used the same mineral spring case but two proprietors and two springs of which the quality are identical and which, on account of their similar position, supply the same market in competition. Cournot assumed that buyers name the prices and that two sellers merely adjust their output to those prices. The horizontal axis represents the sales D1 by proprietor 1 and the vertical axis is the sales D2 by proprietor 2. Curve M1 N1 and M2 N2 represent the maximum profit by the proprietor 1 and proprietor 2 respectively. As we can see, at the point A on curve M2 N2 tell us that if proprietor 1 sells X1 unit of mineral water, then proprietor 2 can maximize her profit by selling Y1 unit. Then at the point B, if proprietor 2 offer Y1 unit of the output for sales, then proprietor 1 will choose to offer output level X2 to maximize his profit. This shows the way each proprietor will react to the other level of output. They are labeled as reaction curve. For another example, if proprietor 1 sells X1 unit, proprietor 2 will sell Y1. Proprietor 1 will react by selling X2 liter of the mineral water at point B, because that gives him the maximum profit when proprietor 2's output is Y1. Once proprietor 1 offers X2 unit, proprietor 2 then react by offering Y2 unit at point C. This process of trial and error will continue until an equilibrium is established at point E. Lastly is Cournot theory in retrospect. For Cournot pure monopoly model, the only thing worth noting in this regard is that Cournot did not recognize the possibility of price discrimination. Under this pricing scheme, marginal revenue would equal to the price to each buyer and the proprietor could garner even more revenue and profit. For Cournot's theory of duopoly, point out that a duopolist cannot be certain about how its rival will react. This uncertainty of mutual reaction renders the duopoly solution indeterminate.
Francis Isidore Edgeworth, born in 1845 in Edgeworthstown, Ireland, was an influential figure in the fields of economy and statistics. Raised in a small Irish town, Edgeworth showed an early inclination toward intellectual pursuit. He attended Trinity College, Dublin before moving to Oxford University, where he pursued further studies. His career highlights include the service as the two professor of political economy at Oxford, a role in which he shaped the field for years. Notably, Edgeworth co-founded the Royal Economic Society, a testament to his commitment to advancing economic thought. His editorial leadership of the Economic Journal for 35 years further reflects his pivotal role in shaping academic discourse. Beyond academic, Edgeworth was recognized as president of the Statistical Society and fellow of the British Academy, establishing him as a leader in the study of economics and statistics. Indifferent curve and exchange. In mathematical physics, Edgeworth introduced a revolutionary idea, the indifferent curve. This concept graphically represents a combination of two goods that provide the same level of satisfaction or utility to an individual. For example, a person might be equally happy with 2 apples and 1 orange, or with 1 apple and 2 orange. The curve helps us visualize this trade-off. Edgeworth extended this idea to study exchange between two individuals. Imagine two traders, each possessing a unique goods. Through negotiation, they can reach an agreement that benefits both. This curve laid the foundation for consumer theory, where the focus is on how people make choice to maximize utility given limited resources. This work has brought application from understanding market dynamic to performing public policy. The contract curve, building on indifferent curve. Edgeworth introduced the concept of the contract curve. This curve represents all the possible mutually beneficial outcomes that two individuals can agree upon in an exchange. However, he pointed out that the final contract is indeterminate. Any point on this curve could be the final agreement, depending on the bargaining process. For instance, consider a hypothetical trade between Crusoe and Friday. Crusoe may prefer one outcome, while Friday favors another. The actual result depends on their negotiation skills and preference. Edgeworth's analysis emphasized the role of the bargaining power and individual preference in economic outcomes. This insight is vital for understanding how contracts and agreements are formed in the real-world market, from labor negotiations to international trade links. Next, duopoly theory. Edgeworth's duopoly theory expanded the earlier model proposed by Antoine Cournot by introducing more realistic assumptions. In Cournot's model, firms produce identical goods and charge the same price, but Edgeworth challenged this by allowing firms to set different prices and face capacity constraints. In his model, one firm begins as the monopolist and sets a high price to maximize profit. When the second firm enters, it can either match the price or undercut it to attract customers. This creates a dynamic competition where both firms adjust their price to maximize profits. Interestingly, Edgeworth demonstrated that the price in this scenario is not fixed. It fluctuates within a range defined by the firm's strategies. His model highlights the complexities of real-world market where firms don't always follow predictable patterns. Today, Edgeworth's insights are used to understand competitive pricings, particularly in industries like airline or tech companies, where firms often engage in price wars. Lastly, marginal and average product. Another key contribution from Edgeworth is his analysis of production, particularly the relationship between inputs and outputs. He distinguished between marginal product, the additional output generated by adding one more units of a variable input, such as labor, and average product, which is the output per unit of inputs. These concepts are vital in understanding how resources are used efficiently in production. For instance, when labor increases, total output initially grows quickly due to specializations. However, after a certain point, the marginal product begins to decline, a concept known as diminishing returns. Edgeworth's works on production theory explain the shape of short-run cost curve, such as total, average, and marginal cost, which are essential for firms when making pricing and production decisions. Moreover, his ideas underpin the marginal production theory of resource, demand, and income distribution, shaping how we understand wage and profit in competitive markets.
There are four impacts of the marginalist school on modern economics. First off, marginal utility and consumer behavior. The marginalist school introduced the concept of marginal utility, which suggests that consumers make decisions based on the additional satisfaction gained from consuming one more unit of a good. Second, price determination and market equilibrium. Another significant contribution was focused on price determination. The marginalist theory emphasized that prices are determined when marginal cost equals marginal revenue, moving beyond classical theories that only consider production costs. Third, welfare economics. The marginalist school also contribute to welfare economics by offering insights into how resources can be allocated to maximize social welfare. This approach influenced policies aimed at improving equity. Lastly, mathematical tools in economic analysis. The marginalist school introduced mathematical tools like calculus to analyze economic behavior with a greater precision. This shift towards quantitative methods allowed for more accurate modeling of complex economic systems.
So the conclusion is the marginalist school revolutionized economics by introducing the concept of marginal analysis, emphasizing subjective utility and advancing mathematical tools. It focused on individual decision making and market equilibrium, laid the foundation for modern microeconomics despite evolving theories. Its principles remain integral to understanding economic behavior and resource allocation.